The old woman's fists trembled as they struck the cold metal door again, and again, weaker each time. "Yawson, my son." Her voice cracked into the darkness beneath the house that once felt like home. Above her, footsteps echoed, calm, unhurried. The key turned with a sharp click. Selina stood there for a moment listening, then walked away without a word. No one heard the cries. No one came. How does a mother end up imprisoned in her own son's mansion? And what happens when that son finally comes home? If you're watching this, tell me where are you watching from and what time is it there? And if stories like this move you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Yawson Mensah stepped out of the sleek black SUV as the gates of his mansion slowly closed behind him, the metallic sound echoing across the compound like a quiet announcement of his return. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow over the estate. Perfectly trimmed hedges, polished marble steps, and tall glass windows reflecting a life of success he had built far from home. He paused for a moment, inhaling deeply. This was it. After nearly 8 years in London, years filled with sleepless nights, relentless ambition, and sacrifices too heavy to name, he was finally back. Back to Ghana. Back to the soil that raised him. Back to the woman who made everything possible. Home, he whispered to himself. But something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious. The house stood exactly as it should. The staff moved quietly, efficiently. The air smelled faintly of fresh polish and expensive perfume. Yet beneath all of it there was a silence, a strange, hollow silence that didn't belong. Yawson's eyes instinctively searched the entrance. Every time he had returned in the past, no matter how brief the visit, there had always been one constant: his mother. Mama Efua would stand right there at the top of the steps, her wrapper tied neatly around her waist, her face glowing with pride. She would smile before he even stepped out of the car, her arms already opening wide, as if to gather all the years he had been away into one embrace. Yawson, she would call her voice, filled with warmth that no wealth in the world could replace. But today, there was no one. Just the quiet. Yawson frowned slightly as he walked up the steps, his footsteps slower, now more deliberate. "Sir, welcome back." One of the house staff greeted, bowing slightly. Yawson nodded politely, his eyes still scanning. "Where is Mama?" The question came out naturally, almost automatically, as though his heart had asked it before his mind could catch up. The staff hesitated, just for a second. But Yawson noticed. She is resting, sir." The man replied, his voice careful. "Resting?" Yawson repeated, his brows knitting together. At this hour, the man lowered his gaze. "Yes, sir." Yawson didn't respond immediately. Instead, he continued walking inside his suitcase left behind as another staff member quickly moved to take it. The interior of the mansion was just as he remembered, spacious, elegant, almost too perfect. Yet the silence followed him inside like a shadow. "Selina," he called out as he stepped into the living room. A moment later, soft footsteps approached from the hallway. Selina Yawson appeared dressed in a flowing cream-colored outfit that complemented her tall, graceful frame. Her face lit up the moment she saw him, and she rushed forward with a smile that seemed both genuine and practiced. "Yawson," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around him. "You're finally home." He hugged her back, though his attention was divided. "Yes, I'm back," he said quietly, pulling away slightly to look at her. "Where's Mama?" For a brief second, something flickered across Selina's face. It was gone so quickly that someone less observant might have missed it entirely. But not Yawson. "She's not here," Selina said, her tone soft, almost soothing. "I sent her to the village." Yawson blinked. "The village. Yes," she continued smoothly. "She hasn't been feeling well. The doctor said she needed fresh air peace, a quieter environment, so I arranged for her to stay with your aunt. Yawson stared at her, processing. My aunt? He repeated slowly, which Aunt Selina hesitated just a fraction too long. Auntie Amma, she said. Yawson's expression tightened. Auntie Amma passed away 3 years ago, he said, his voice calm, but sharp. The room fell silent. Selina's smile faltered, then quickly reassembled itself. I mean, her daughter, she corrected lightly. You know, the one who lives near the old house. Yawson didn't respond. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her. Something wasn't right. His mother had never liked leaving the city for long. Even when she visited the village, she would call him, constantly complaining about the heat, the mosquitoes, the slow pace of life. She preferred being close to the hospital, close to people, close to everything. And more than anything, she would have told him. No matter how sick she was, no matter what. Why didn't you inform me? He asked quietly. Selina sighed softly, reaching out to touch his arm. Yawson, you were busy. You had meetings, investors. I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily. Her voice was gentle, reasonable, convincing. But something inside him refused to settle. I always want to know about my mother, he said, pulling his arm away gently. Selina's eyes flickered again, but she quickly masked it with a soft smile. Of course, she said, and you will see her soon. I've already made arrangements for her to return once she's stronger. Yawson nodded slowly, though his mind was racing. All right, he said. I'll call her. Selina's smile froze. She doesn't have network there, she said quickly. You know how those areas are. Yawson let out a quiet breath, his gaze drifting toward the hallway. I'll visit her myself, then, he said. Selina stepped in front of him almost instinctively. Yawson, she said softly, you just arrived. You're tired. At least rest first. Eat something. We can plan the trip properly tomorrow. There it was again. That subtle resistance. That gentle but firm attempt to delay. Yawson looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. A small, controlled smile. You're right, he said. I'm tired. Relief flashed across Selina's face, though she tried to hide it. I'll have dinner prepared, she said quickly. Your favorite. As she turned and walked away, Yawson's smile slowly faded. His eyes darkened. Something was wrong. He could feel it now, not just as a passing thought, but as a heavy, undeniable truth settling in his chest. The house felt different. The silence was too loud. And the woman standing in front of him, the woman he had trusted with everything, was hiding something. Yawson turned slightly, his gaze drifting toward the far end of the corridor. For a brief moment he'd thought he heard something, a faint sound, so soft it could have been his imagination, like a distant knock. He held his breath, listened. Nothing. Just silence again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like something was waiting, hidden, trapped. And for the first time since stepping into his own home, Yawson felt a chill run down his spine. Because deep inside, a terrifying thought had begun to form. What if his mother was closer than he had been told? The night settled over the mansion like a heavy curtain, quiet but suffocating. From the outside, everything looked perfect, soft golden lights glowing through tall windows, the distant hum of generators, the faint rustle of palm trees swaying in the breeze. It was the kind of place people dreamed of. Inside, however, something unseen lingered beneath the surface. Yawson stood alone by the large window in his study, his reflection staring back at him, sharp, composed, successful. A man who had conquered foreign markets, negotiated million-dollar deals, and built an empire from nothing. Yet at that moment, none of it mattered. His mind was somewhere else, with her, Mama Efua. He loosened his tie, slightly exhaling as he replayed Selina's words in his head. She's in the village. Resting. No network. Each sentence sounded reasonable on its own, but together they formed something fragile, something that didn't quite hold. Yawson was not a man who ignored inconsistencies. It was how he had survived in business, how he had risen. And right now, everything felt inconsistent. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said without turning. The door opened slowly. It was Adwoa, the housemaid. She stepped inside carefully, almost as if the room itself could reject her. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her fingers, trembling just slightly. "Yes," Yawson asked, finally turning to face her. "Sir, I brought your tea," she said quietly, placing the tray on the table. Yawson nodded. "Thank you." She turned to leave immediately. "Adwoa." She froze. Slowly she turned back, her eyes lowered. "Yes, sir." Yawson walked closer, his tone calm but firm. "Look at me." She hesitated, then obeyed. Her eyes met his, and in that brief moment Yawson saw it clearly. Fear. Not the casual nervousness of a worker around her employer. This was deeper, heavier. "What is going on in this house?" he asked softly. Adwoa's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak. Her fingers tightened nails pressing into her palms. I don't understand, sir," she said quickly, her voice shaking. Yawson studied her. "You do?" he replied quietly. "And you're afraid." Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. "No, sir, Adwoa," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking as your employer. I'm asking as a son." Silence filled the room. The air felt thick. Adwoa's breathing became uneven. For a moment it seemed like she might finally say something, finally release whatever truth she had been holding inside. But then, footsteps echoed in the hallway, sharp, confident. Adwoa's entire body stiffened. "Selina." The door opened without a knock. "There you are," Selina said lightly, her smile effortless as she stepped inside. "I was wondering where my husband disappeared to." Her eyes shifted briefly to Adwoa, and in that single glance, something passed between them, a warning, unspoken, but unmistakable. Adwoa immediately lowered her gaze. "I'll excuse myself," she murmured, hurrying out of the room. The door closed behind her. Yawson watched it for a second longer than necessary. Then he turned back to Selina. "You startled her," he said. Selina laughed softly, walking closer. "Oh, please. These girls are always nervous." "It's nothing." Yawson didn't respond immediately. Instead, he picked up his tea, taking a slow sip. "Where exactly is my mother staying?" he asked casually. Selina tilted her head slightly. "I told you at the village." "Yes," Yawson said, but where Selina paused. "Just briefly." "Near Cape Coast," she said. Yawson's grip tightened slightly around the cup. "My mother's village is not near Cape Coast," he said quietly. The room went still. Selina's smile didn't disappear, but it changed. It became thinner, sharper. "Yawson," she said gently, "you're overthinking. You just arrived. You're tired." "Answer the question," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. Selina sighed, turning away slightly as if annoyed. "Fine. It's not exactly her village, but it's close enough. The point is she's safe." "Safe." The word echoed in Yawson's mind. Safe, but unreachable. Safe, but invisible. Safe, but no one could confirm. He set the cup down slowly. "I want to see her," he said. Selina turned back to him, her expression now carefully controlled. "And you will," she replied. "But not tonight. Why not because she's resting? Or because you don't want me to find something?" Yawson asked. The words hung in the air like a blade. Selina's eyes hardened just for a second. Then she smiled again. "Yawson," she said softly, stepping closer. "I think you're letting your imagination run wild. I've been taking care of everything here while you were away, including your mother." Yawson held her gaze. "Taking care of her," he repeated. "Yes." Silence stretched between them, long, tense. Then suddenly, a sound, faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. A soft thud. Yawson's head turned instantly toward the hallway. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Selina didn't move. "It's nothing," she said quickly. Another sound. This time, slightly louder, like something hitting a surface, weak, desperate. Yawson's heart began to race. "Where's that coming from?" he demanded. Selina stepped in front of him again. "It's probably just pipes," she said, her voice firmer now. "This house is old in some parts." But Yawson wasn't listening anymore, because deep down, something inside him had already answered. That sound, it didn't belong to pipes. It didn't belong to the house. It belonged to someone who was trying to be heard. Yawson moved past Selina. "Yawson," she called sharply. But he didn't stop. He followed the direction of the sound, his footsteps quickening as he moved down the corridor. The mansion suddenly felt different. The walls closer. The silence heavier. Another faint knock echoed. Closer now. Yawson stopped, his eyes fixed on a section of the floor near the end of the hallway, a large rug, perfectly placed, too perfectly. Slowly, he stepped toward it. Behind him, Selina's voice cut through the air. "Don't." He froze, not because of her command, but because of the tone, cold, sharp, unfamiliar. Yawson turned slowly to face her. Selina stood there, her posture no longer soft or welcoming. Her eyes were different now, darker. "You're tired," she said, her voice low. "Go to bed." Yawson stared at her. Then, without breaking eye contact, he bent down and grabbed the edge of the rug. Selina's expression shifted instantly. "Yawson, stop." But it was too late. He pulled. The rug slid aside, revealing a metal door, locked, silent, but beneath it, a faint sound, a whisper. "Yawson." His blood ran cold, because he knew that voice, even after all these years, even through weakness, even through fear. There was no mistake. It was her, Mama Afua. The name echoed in Yawson's chest long after the sound itself faded. Yawson. It had not been loud. It had not been clear. But it had been real. And it had come from beneath his own home. For a moment, time seemed to fracture, splitting between the man he had become and the boy he once was. The billionaire, composed and strategic, stood frozen above the metal door. But somewhere deep inside him, a younger Yawson was already running barefoot across dusty paths, chasing the sound of his mother's voice calling him home at sunset. Only now, she wasn't calling him to eat. She was calling him to survive. Yawson's hand tightened on the edge of the rug. His knuckles turned white. "Open it," he said. Selina didn't move. The air between them grew tense, thick with something darker than fear. It was control, power, a final line being drawn. "There's nothing down there," Selina replied, her voice low, steady, but no longer gentle. "You're imagining things." Yawson slowly rose to his feet, his eyes locked onto hers. "I heard her," he said. "No, you didn't. I know my mother's voice." A flicker passed across Selina's face, annoyance, then irritation, then something colder. "You're tired," she said again, though this time it sounded like a command, not concern. "You just got back from a long flight. You're emotional. This is not the time to start creating drama." Yawson took a step toward her. "Creating drama," he repeated quietly. Selina held her ground, but something in her posture shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible. "I've managed this house for years," she continued. "Everything you see here, everything that works, That's because of me. While you were away building your empire, I was here making sure things didn't fall apart. Yawson's jaw tightened. And my mother, he asked. Was she part of what you were managing? Selina didn't answer. Instead, she crossed her arms slowly, her expression hardening. You don't understand everything, she said. Then help me understand. Silence. For a moment it seemed like she might speak, might finally reveal something honest. But then, a faint knock. From beneath the door, weaker than before, but still there. Yawson didn't hesitate this time. He dropped to his knees and pressed his ear against the cold metal. Ma, he called, his voice breaking, despite his effort to stay composed. Mama, can you hear me? A pause. Then, a faint movement. Yawson. It was barely more than breath, but it was enough. Everything inside him snapped. He shot up to his feet. Where's the key, he demanded. Selina didn't move. Selina, he said, his voice rising for the first time, where is the key? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I don't have it. Yawson stared at her. You're lying. I'm not. You just told me there's nothing down there, he said, his voice sharp now. But I heard her. I heard my mother. So either you open this door right now, or I will break it down. Selina's composure cracked. You're overreacting, she snapped. You don't even know what you're doing. What I'm doing, Yawson replied coldly, is trying to save my mother. Another silence. Heavy, unforgiving. Then Selina laughed. A short, bitter sound that didn't belong to the woman he thought he married. You think you're saving her? She said, shaking her head. After all these years, after you left her here. With me? Yawson's expression hardened. I trusted you, he said, and I carried that burden, she shot back. Do you have any idea what it was like, living with her every day? Her judgment, her constant reminders that I would never be good enough for you. Yawson blinked, caught off guard, not by the accusation, but by the intensity behind it. She's my mother, he said quietly. And I'm your wife, Selina shouted. The words echoed through the hallway. From below, a faint whimper followed. Yawson closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them again, colder than before. Give me the key, he said. Selina shook her head slowly. No, that was all. Just one word, but it changed everything. Yawson didn't argue again. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. Instead, he turned and walked away. Selina frowned, confused by the sudden shift. Where are you going? She demanded. Yawson didn't answer. He disappeared down the hallway, his footsteps steady and purposeful. For a moment, Selina stood frozen, uncertain. Then she followed. Yawson, she called. Don't be ridiculous. He entered the storage room at the back of the house, the one rarely used, filled with tools and old equipment. Selina stopped at the doorway as she saw him reach for something. A heavy iron bar. Yawson. No, she said, her voice tightening. Don't do this. He turned slowly, the bar resting in his hand. You should have opened the door, he said. Then he walked past her, back to the hallway, back to the metal door. Selina rushed after him, panic now clear in her movements. If you break that door, you'll regret it, she warned. Yawson didn't respond. He stood over the door, lifted the iron bar, and brought it down. The impact echoed through the house. Once, twice, again. Each strike louder than the last. Each one breaking more than just metal. Below, a faint cry rose, fragile, trembling, but filled with something new. Hope. Stop! Selina screamed, grabbing his arm. You don't know what you're doing. Yawson shook her off. I know exactly what I'm doing. He raised the bar again and struck. The lock began to crack, metal bending under force. Selina stepped back, her breathing uneven now. This was no longer control. This was collapse. Yawson struck again and again, until finally a sharp splitting sound. The lock-in gave way. The door shifted slightly. A cold draft escaped from below, carrying with it the scent of dampness, neglect, suffering. Yawson dropped the bar. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he stared at the door. Then, slowly, he reached down and pulled it open. Darkness stared back at him, thick, heavy, unforgiving. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because somewhere in that darkness was the truth, and he wasn't sure he was ready to see it. Behind him, Selina stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes wide. "Yawson," she whispered. But he didn't hear her, because from the shadows below, a voice rose again, faint, broken. "My son." Yawson stepped forward, into the darkness. The darkness swallowed Yawson the moment he stepped beyond the threshold. The air changed instantly, thick, damp, and stale, carrying a smell that spoke of neglect, confinement, and time forgotten. It clung to his skin, crept into his lungs, and tightened something deep in his chest. Behind him, the hallway light spilled weakly down the narrow stairwell, but they barely reached the bottom. Each step he took downward felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of what he was about to face was pressing against him. "Ma," he called softly. His voice echoed faintly, swallowed by the shadows. No response, just silence. But not the empty kind. This silence felt alive, as if it was holding something back. Yawson took another step, then another. The wooden stairs creaked beneath his weight, each sound painfully loud in the stillness. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, steady at first, then faster, louder, almost drowning out everything else. Then a sound, a faint movement, a breath. Yawson froze. "Ma," he called again, this time louder. A weak rustle answered him, from the far corner. He strained his eyes, trying to adjust to the darkness. Shapes slowly began to form, blurred outlines, broken pieces of what might have once been a room. Old boxes, a cracked chair, a thin mattress on the floor. And then, a figure, curled, still, barely visible. Yawson's breath caught. "No," he whispered. His feet moved before his mind could catch up. He rushed forward, nearly stumbling as he crossed the uneven floor. "Ma!" He dropped to his knees beside the figure, his hands trembling as they reached out. "Ma, it's me. It's Yawson." The body shifted slightly at the sound of his voice. Slowly, painfully. The woman turned her head. The dim light from the stairwell fell just enough to reveal her face. And everything inside Yawson shattered. Mama Efua. Her once strong, radiant face was gaunt, her cheeks hollow, her skin dry and marked by exhaustion. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes, those warm, steady eyes that had guided him through childhood, were sunken, clouded with pain, but still searching, still hoping. For him. "Son," she whispered, her voice barely more than air. Tears filled his eyes instantly. "I'm here, Ma," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." He gently lifted her, supporting her frail body against his chest. She felt impossibly light, like something that had been slowly fading away. Her hands, weak and trembling, reached up to touch his face, as if she needed to be sure, as if she feared this was just another dream. "You came back," she murmured. "I should never have left," he said, shaking his head, tears falling freely now. "I should have been here." Mama Efua gave a faint, fragile smile. "No, my son. You went to build your life." Her words were slow, broken, each one costing her strength. Yawson held her tighter. "And I left you here to suffer," he said, his voice filled with pain. "No, Ma. No." She shook her head slightly as if trying to ease his guilt, but her body betrayed the truth. The cold, The weakness. The hunger. Yawson's eyes scanned the room, his chest tightening further with every detail he took in. A small bucket in the corner. A thin, worn blanket. No proper bed, no light, no dignity. His hands clenched. A wave of anger rose inside him, sharp, burning, uncontrollable. "Who did this to you?" he asked, though he already knew. Mama Afua didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted towards the stairway, toward the light, toward the world above. Yawson followed her gaze. And there, standing at the top of the stairs, was Selina. She hadn't moved. She hadn't spoken. She simply stood there watching, her expression unreadable, cold. Yawson slowly turned back to his mother. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly. "I know." Mama Afua's fingers tightened weakly around his shirt. She said, "I was a burden," she whispered. The words cut deeper than anything else. Yawson closed his eyes briefly, trying to steady himself. A burden. The woman who had carried him, fed him, sacrificed everything for him, reduced to a burden. His jaw tightened. "You are not a burden," he said firmly, opening his eyes. "You are my mother, and I failed you." "No," she whispered again, her voice fading. "You came back." Her strength was slipping. Yawson felt it. The way her body leaned heavier into his arms. The way her breathing became uneven. Panic surged through him. "Stay with me, Ma," he said urgently. "Stay with me, I'm taking you out of here." He carefully lifted her, standing up with slow, controlled movement. She weighed almost nothing. And that terrified him more than anything. As he turned toward the stairs, Selina finally spoke. "You shouldn't have opened that door." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Yawson stopped. His eyes lifted to meet hers. "You shouldn't have locked it," he replied. Selina tilted her head slightly as if studying him. "You don't understand," she said. "I did what had to be done." Yawson let out a short, bitter laugh. "What had to be done?" he repeated. "Starving her. Leaving her in the dark. Calling her a burden." "She was destroying this house," Selina snapped suddenly, her composure breaking. Her presence, her attitude, everything. "She never accepted me. Never respected me." "She didn't have to respect cruelty," Yawson said coldly. Selina's eyes flashed. "And what about me?" she demanded. "Do I not deserve peace? Do I not deserve to live without constant judgment?" Yawson took a step up the stairs, his grip tightening protectively around his mother. "You deserve to be human," he said, "but you chose to be something else." Selina's face hardened. "You think this makes you righteous," she said. "You left. You abandoned her here with me. You don't get to come back and pretend you're the hero." The words hit him, because part of them were true. Yawson didn't respond. He simply kept walking. Step by step, closer to the light, closer to freedom. Selina didn't move to stop him, but her silence now felt different, dangerous, unpredictable. As Yawson reached the top of the stairs, the full light of the hallway fell over Mama Afua's face. She winced slightly, her eyes struggling to adjust. Yawson held her gently. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now?" But deep inside, he knew this was far from over, because what he had uncovered tonight was not just cruelty. It was something deeper, something calculated, something that didn't end with a locked door. And as he carried his mother away from the darkness, one question burned in his mind. How long had this been happening? And what else had Selina been hiding? The moment Yawson carried Mama Afua into the light, the house no longer felt like home. It felt like a crime scene. Every polished surface, every expensive decoration, every carefully arranged detail suddenly looked hollow, like a beautiful mask hiding something rotten underneath. "Get the car ready." Now Yawson shouted. His voice thundered through the hallway, sharp and commanding, leaving no room for hesitation. Within seconds, the staff began moving in a rush, feet echoing across marble floors, doors opening, hurried whispers filling the air. No one asked questions. No one dared. Because they had seen. They had all seen. And now the truth was no longer something that could be hidden. Yawson held his mother close, her frail body wrapped in a blanket someone had quickly brought. Her head rested lightly against his chest, her breathing shallow, uneven. "Stay with me." "Ma," he murmured softly. "We're going to the hospital. You're going to be okay." Mama Efua didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were half closed, her strength fading in waves. But her hand still held on to him, as if letting go would mean disappearing, as if he was the only thing tethering her to this world. Yawson's heart tightened painfully. He moved quickly toward the front door. Behind him, Selena's voice cut through the chaos. "You're overreacting." Yawson stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he turned. Selena stood in the center of the hallway, her posture straight, her expression composed once again. It was as if the scene that had just unfolded meant nothing to her, as if a starving woman locked in a basement was just an inconvenience. "She's weak," Selena continued calmly. "That's all. You don't need to make this dramatic." Yawson stared at her, and for the first time since he met her, he didn't recognize her at all. "This is not weakness," he said quietly. "This is abuse." Selena's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but something colder. "You're using big words now," she replied, "because you feel guilty." The accusation landed, heavy, precise. Yawson felt it, because somewhere deep inside, there was guilt. He had left. He had trusted. He had assumed everything would be fine, and that assumption had nearly cost his mother her life. But guilt did not erase truth. "You will not twist this," he said, his voice steady. "Not tonight." Selena took a step forward. "I did what I had to do," she insisted. She refused to listen. She refused to accept me. She turned every day into a battlefield. "So you locked her in," one Yawson replied. Silence. Sharp. Unforgiving. Selena's eyes hardened. "You think you know everything," she said, "but you don't know what it's like living with someone who sees you as nothing, who reminds you every day that you don't belong." Yawson shook his head slowly. "That still doesn't justify this," he said. "Nothing does." Selena didn't respond, because there was no justification. Not anymore. Not after what he had seen. Not after what he was holding in his arms. Yawson turned away from her. "Open the door," he ordered the staff. The large entrance doors swung open immediately. Cool night air rushed in. Yawson stepped outside. The world felt different. The sky stretched wide above him, silent and distant. The city lights flickered beyond the walls of the mansion, unaware of the storm unfolding within. The car was already waiting. He moved quickly, carefully, placing Mama Efua in the back seat, supporting her head as he settled beside her. "Drive," he said firmly. The engine roared to life. The gates opened, and within seconds they were gone. The hospital lights were harsh, too bright, too unforgiving. Yawson stood beside the emergency bed as doctors and nurses moved around his mother with urgency, checking her pulse, inserting IV lines, speaking in rapid, clinical tones. "She's severely malnourished," one doctor said. "Dehydrated. Weak pulse." "How long has she been like this?" another asked. Yawson couldn't answer, because he didn't know, and that realization cut deeper than anything else. "I just found her," he said, his voice low. The doctor glanced at him briefly, then returned to his work. "We need to stabilize her immediately," he said. "She's critical, critical." The word echoed. Yawson stepped back slightly, his hands trembling. This was not how it was supposed to be. He had imagined this return so many times. He had pictured laughter, warm meals, Long conversations with his mother about everything he had accomplished. He had wanted to show her that her sacrifices were not in vain. Instead, he was standing in a hospital, watching her fight to stay alive. Because he wasn't there. Because he trusted the wrong person. Because he didn't ask enough questions. Yawson closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, clearer now, colder, stronger. This was not the end. This was the beginning. Hours passed, slowly, painfully. Yawson sat outside the ICU, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. The hallway was quiet now, the rush of earlier replaced by a heavy stillness. Every second felt longer than the last. Every passing nurse, every flicker of movement behind the glass doors made his heart jump. Then finally, a doctor approached. Yawson stood immediately. "How is she?" he asked. The doctor removed his gloves, his expression serious but not hopeless. "She's stable," he said. "For now." Yawson exhaled the tension in his body, releasing just slightly. "But she's very weak," the doctor continued. "Her body has been under severe stress for an extended period. Recovery will take time." Yawson nodded. "I understand." The doctor studied him for a moment. "You said you found her like that?" he asked. "Yes," where Yawson hesitated, then answered. "In my house." The doctor's expression shifted. Concern. Then something else. Something heavier. "You may want to report this," he said quietly. Yawson met his gaze. "I will." And he meant it. Later that night, as Yawson sat alone outside the ICU, his phone vibrated. "Selina." He stared at the screen for a long moment, then answered. "Yes." Her voice came through calm, controlled. "Is she alive?" she asked. Yawson's grip tightened. "Yes," he said, "she is." A pause. "Then that's good," Selina replied. Yawson frowned. Something about her tone. It wasn't relief. It wasn't concern. It was calculation. "We need to talk," she continued. Yawson leaned back slowly in his chair. "No," he said. "We don't." "Yawson, you had your chance to talk," he cut in. "You chose silence." Selina's voice sharpened slightly. "You're making a mistake." "No," he said calmly. "I already made one." Silence. Then a quiet, dangerous tone. "You don't understand what you're getting into," Selina said. Yawson's eyes darkened. "Neither do you," he replied. And he ended the call. As the screen went dark, Yawson leaned back, his gaze fixed on the ICU doors. His mother was alive. For now. But the truth had just begun to unfold. And Selina was not finished. Not by a long shot. Because people like her didn't lose control quietly. And deep down, Yawson knew the worst was still coming. The hospital never truly slept. Even in the quietest hours of the night, there were always footsteps echoing down the hallways, machines beeping softly behind closed doors, and voices whispering in low, urgent tones. Life and death moved side by side here, separated only by thin walls and fragile hope. Yawson remained seated outside the ICU, his posture rigid, his eyes fixed on the glass doors, as if sheer willpower could keep them from ever opening with bad news. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Mama Efua, curled on the floor, weak, forgotten. And each time the same question echoed in his mind. How long had she been down there, calling his name, waiting for him? His hands clenched. The answer mattered, because it would determine not just what Selina had done, but what he had allowed to happen. A soft voice broke through his thoughts. Sir Yawson looked up. It was Adwoa. She stood a few steps away, her posture hesitant, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if afraid someone might be watching. Adwoa, Yawson said, his voice calmer than he felt. "What are you doing here? I came to see how Madam is, she replied quietly. Yawson studied her. You knew, he said. It wasn't a question. Adwoa's eyes filled with tears instantly. I'm sorry, sir, she whispered, her voice trembling. I wanted to tell you so many times. Yawson leaned forward slightly. Then why didn't you? Her lips quivered. Because she warned me, Adwoa said. She said if I spoke, I would lose everything. My job, my home, even my family would suffer. Yawson's jaw tightened. Selina, of course. How long has my mother been down there? He asked. Adwoa hesitated, then answered. Almost 6 months. The words hit like a blow. 6 months. Yawson's breath caught. 6 months of darkness. 6 months of hunger. 6 months of calling out Deta, with no one answering. His hands trembled, and for the first time since everything began, anger rose inside him, not just toward Selina, but toward himself. I should have come back sooner, he murmured. Adwoa shook her head quickly. No, sir, she said. You didn't know. She made sure you wouldn't know. Yawson looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Adwoa stepped closer, lowering her voice. She controlled everything she said, the phones, the messages, even the letters your mother tried to send. Yawson's eyes narrowed. She tried to contact me. Yes. Adwoa nodded, tears falling now. Many times. But Madame Selina, she intercepted everything. She said you were too busy, that you didn't care anymore. Yawson felt something inside him break. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. His mother had tried. She had reached out, and he had never heard her, because someone had silenced her voice. She told your mother, Adwoa continued, her voice shaking, that you had changed, that you had forgotten her, that you didn't want her around anymore. Yawson closed his eyes. The pain was sharp, unforgiving. Because he knew his mother. He knew how much those words would have hurt her. She believed it, he asked quietly. Adwoa nodded slowly. At first. No, she said. She kept saying my son would never do that. But after weeks, months, with no reply, no calls, she started to doubt. Yawson's chest tightened. She cried a lot, Adwoa whispered. But even then, she still prayed for you every day. Silence fell between them, heavy, sacred, because in that moment Yawson understood something that went beyond anger, beyond betrayal. His mother had suffered not just physically, but emotionally. She had been made to believe that the one person she trusted most had abandoned her. Yawson opened his eyes, and they were no longer filled with confusion. They were clear, cold, focused. Why didn't anyone else say something, he asked. Adwoa looked down. Some of the staff knew, she admitted, but Madame Selina, she replaced many of them, the ones who asked questions. They were sent away. Yawson nodded slowly. Of course. Selina hadn't just acted out of impulse. This was planned, controlled, executed over time, which meant there was more. What about the finances, he asked suddenly. Adwoa looked up surprised. I don't know everything she said, but I heard things. Conversations. What kind of conversations? Adwoa hesitated again, then spoke. She has been moving money, she said. Large amounts, different accounts. Yawson's expression darkened. To where I don't know exactly, Adwoa said, but I heard her mention offshore accounts. Yawson leaned back slowly. Now it made sense. This wasn't just about resentment or jealousy. This was about control, power, and money. Selina had isolated his mother, silenced her, removed her from the equation, so there would be no one left to question her actions, no one left to stand between her and everything Yawson had built. A soft beeping sound came from inside the ICU. Yawson's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Adwoa. Thank you, he said quietly. Adwoa wiped her tears. I'm sorry, sir, she said again. I should have been braver. Yawson shook his head. You did what you could, he replied. Now, it's my turn. Adwoa nodded, stepping back. As she turned to leave, Yawson spoke again. Adwoa. She stopped. Yes, sir. From now on, he said, you're under my protection. No one will touch you. No one will threaten you again. Her eyes filled with relief. Thank you, sir, she whispered, and then she left. Yawson sat alone once more, but this time he was not the same man. The uncertainty was gone. The doubt had been replaced with something stronger. Resolve. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Mr. Kofi, he said when the line connected, I need you. Kofi Mensah was not just his lawyer. He was one of the best, sharp, relentless, and loyal. What's going on? Kofi asked. Yawson's voice was steady. My mother was held captive in my house for 6 months, he said, by my wife. Silence. Then I'm coming, Kofi said. Yawson ended the call, then made another. This time, to his financial team. I want a full audit, he said. Every account, every transaction, no delays. He hung up, then leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the ICU door. Everything was moving now. Slowly, but surely. The truth was no longer hidden, and Selina was about to face it. Because Yawson was no longer just a son in pain. He was a man who had built an empire, a man who understood power, strategy, and consequences. And for the first time since he returned home, he wasn't reacting anymore. He was preparing, because this was no longer just about saving his mother. It was about justice, and justice was coming. By morning, the hospital corridor felt different. Not quieter, not calmer, but sharper, like something invisible had been set in motion. Yawson stood by the large glass window overlooking the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression unreadable as he listened. Yes, he said slowly. I want everything. Every account she has access to. Cross-check it with any transfers made in the last 12 months. On the other end, his financial advisor responded quickly, already moving into action. We'll need authorization. You have it, Yawson cut in. Full authorization. And I want results before the end of the day. He ended the call without waiting for a reply. There was no time for hesitation anymore. Not after what he had learned. Not after what he had seen. Behind him, the ICU doors opened with a soft mechanical sound. Yawson turned instantly. A nurse stepped out. Mr. Mensah. Yes, he said, walking toward her. She's awake, the nurse said gently. But she's very weak. You can see her, briefly. Yawson nodded. Thank you. His steps slowed as he approached the door. For the first time since the night before, fear crept back in. Not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that reminds you what's at stake. He pushed the door open. Inside the room was quiet. Machines beeped softly, their rhythm steady but fragile. Tubes ran from metal stands into his mother's arm. Her chest rose and fell slowly beneath the thin hospital blanket. But her eyes were open. And they found him immediately. Ma, Yawson whispered. Mama Ifua's lips trembled into a faint smile. My son. He moved to her side, sitting carefully, taking her hand in his. Her skin felt warmer now, but still fragile, like something recovering from being broken. I'm here, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. Her fingers tightened weakly around his. You came back, she murmured again, as if repeating it made it more real. Yawson swallowed the emotion rising in his throat. I should have come sooner, he said. Mama Ifua shook her head slightly. No, you were building your future. And I left you behind, he replied quietly. Her eyes softened. You didn't know? The words were simple, but they carried something deeper than forgiveness. They carried understanding, and that hurt even more. Yawson lowered his gaze briefly, then looked back at her. "I know now," he said, "and I'm going to fix this." Mama Afua studied his face. Then slowly her expression changed. A shadow passed through her eyes. "Selena," she whispered. Yawson's jaw tightened. "You don't have to talk about her right now," he said gently. But Mama Afua shook her head again. "No. You must know." Her voice was weak, but there was urgency in it. Truth. And truth could not wait. Yawson leaned closer. "I'm listening?" She took a slow breath. "At first, she was kind," Mama Afua said. "Very kind. Respectful. Loving." Yawson nodded. "That's who I thought I married," he said. Mama Afua's eyes flickered. "But after you left, she changed," she continued. "Little by little, how Yawson asked. She started controlling things," Mama Afua said. "The house, the staff, even what I ate, where I went." Yawson's hands clenched. "She said it was for order," Mama Afua added. "But it didn't feel like order. It felt like being watched." Yawson frowned. "She restricted you," Mama Afua nodded weakly. "At first, just small things," she said, then she began to speak differently. Colder. Her voice trembled. "She said I was old, that I didn't belong in your world anymore, that I would embarrass you." Yawson's chest tightened painfully. "You would never embarrass me," he said firmly. Mama Afua gave a faint smile. "I know that now." A pause. "Then she started keeping my phone," Mama Afua continued, "saying I didn't need it, that you were busy, that you wouldn't answer." Yawson closed his eyes briefly. "She lied to you," he said. Mama Afua nodded. "But I still believed you would come," she whispered. Her faith, even after everything. It humbled him. Then her expression shifted again. Darker this time. Fear. "One day," she said slowly, "we argued." Yawson leaned closer. "What happened?" "I told her. She had changed," Mama Afua said. "That this was not how a family should be." And Mama Afua's fingers trembled slightly. "She became angry," she said. "Not just angry. Something else." Yawson's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" She looked at me. Mama Afua whispered like I was in her way. The words hung in the air, heavy, chilling. Yawson felt a cold wave pass through him. "What happened next?" he asked quietly. Mama Afua hesitated, then spoke. She said, "If I didn't stop interfering, she would remove me," she said. Yawson's jaw tightened, and then Mama Afua's eyes filled with tears. "That night, she brought me food," she said. "She was calm, too calm." Yawson's breath slowed, listening, waiting. "I felt dizzy after eating." Mama Afua continued, "My body became weak. I couldn't move." Yawson's heart pounded. "She drugged you," he said. Mama Afua nodded faintly. "When I woke up, I was already down there," she whispered, "in the dark." Silence filled the room. The machines continued their steady rhythm. But inside Yawson, everything had stopped. This wasn't just cruelty. This wasn't just anger. This was premeditated, calculated, planned. "She locked me there," Mama Afua said. "She said no one would believe me, and that you were too far away to care." Yawson's hands trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, controlled fury. "And she kept you there for 6 months, he said quietly. Mama Afua didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was already clear. Yawson leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against her hand. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Mama Ifua's fingers moved weakly, brushing his hair like she used to when he was a child. "It's over now," she said softly. Yawson lifted his head, and for the first time since everything began, there was no hesitation in his eyes. No doubt, just certainty. "No," he said. "It's not over." Mama Ifua looked at him, confused. Yawson's voice was calm, but firm. "It's just beginning," he continued. "What she did, she will answer for it." Mama Ifua's expression softened again. "Don't let anger consume you," she whispered. Yawson shook his head. "This isn't anger," he said. "This is justice." A quiet knock came from the door. Yawson turned. Kofi stood there, serious, focused, ready. Yawson stood slowly. "I'll be back." "Ma," he said gently. Mama Ifua nodded. "Go," she said. "Do what you must." Yawson stepped out of the room, closing the door behind him. Kofi met his gaze. "You have something?" Yawson asked. Kofi nodded. "A lot," he said. Yawson's expression didn't change. "Good," he replied. Because the truth had been spoken, the pieces were coming together, and now there was no turning back. Kofi didn't waste time. The moment Yawson stepped into the corridor and closed the ICU door behind him, the lawyer handed over a slim black folder. It looked ordinary, unassuming, even, but Yawson could feel the weight of it before he even opened it. "What's inside?" Yawson asked. "Enough to change everything," Kofi replied. Yawson flipped it open. Documents, bank statements, transaction logs, names, numbers, dates. At first glance, it looked like any other financial report. But as Yawson's eyes moved across the pages, patterns began to emerge. Large withdrawals, unexplained transfers, multiple accounts, some local, some offshore, all connected to one name: Selena Yawson. Yawson's expression darkened. "How long?" he asked. Kofi adjusted his glasses slightly. "At least 8 months," he said. But the activity became more aggressive in the last 6. 6 months. The same amount of time his mother had been locked away. Not a coincidence. Not even close. "She started moving money the same time your mother disappeared from the system," Kofi continued. "No hospital visits, no public appearances, no transactions under her name." Yawson closed the folder slowly. "So she removed my mother," he said quietly, and then cleared the path. Kofi nodded. "That's what it looks like." Yawson exhaled slowly, his mind working through the implications. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't impulsive. This was strategic. Selena had planned everything. Isolate the mother, control the house, take over the finances, and eventually, take over everything. "She thought I wouldn't come back," Yawson said. Kofi glanced at him. "Or she thought by the time you did, it would be too late." Silence settled between them, heavy, calculated. Yawson reopened the folder, flipping to another section. "These accounts," he said. "Can we freeze them?" Kofi nodded. "With the evidence we have, yes. But we need to act fast, then do it." Kofi didn't hesitate. "I'll start the process immediately." Yawson handed the folder back. And Kofi— "Yes, I want a criminal case prepared," Yawson said. "Not just financial, everything." Kofi studied him carefully. "Kidnapping," he said. "False imprisonment, abuse, fraud." Yawson nodded. "All of it." Kofi gave a slow, approving nod. "I'll handle it." As Kofi stepped aside to make his calls, Yawson leaned against the wall briefly, his eyes closing for just a second. Everything was moving quickly now, faster than most people could handle. But Yawson wasn't most people. He had built his life navigating pressure, making decisions when the stakes were high. And right now, the stakes were higher than ever. Because this wasn't about money. This was about family. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere had changed. The silence that once felt controlled now felt unstable, like a structure on the verge of collapse. Selina stood in the living room, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low but urgent. "I told you to move everything," she said. "Why is it still there?" A pause. Her expression tightened. "No, listen to me. This is not a situation you delay. If he finds anything..." She stopped suddenly. Her eyes lifted, because she wasn't alone. 2 security officers stood at the entrance. Behind them, Kofi. Selina's grip on the phone tightened. "I'll call you back," she said, quickly ending the call. Her composure returned almost instantly. "What is this?" she asked calmly, stepping forward. "Why are you here?" Kofi walked in without waiting for permission. "Mrs. Yawson," he said, his tone professional, controlled. "We need to speak." Selina crossed her arms. "I don't recall inviting you." "No," Kofi replied, "but the law doesn't require an invitation." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And what exactly does the law want with me?" Kofi signaled to one of the officers, who stepped forward and handed Selina a document. She took it, scanning it quickly. For a moment, her face remained unreadable. Then a flicker, small, but real. "What is this?" she asked. "A notice," Kofi said. "Your accounts are being frozen pending investigation." Selina looked up sharply. "You can't do that." "We already have," Kofi replied. Her breathing slowed, but her eyes changed. This wasn't panic. Not yet. This was calculation. "You think this is enough?" she said. "You think freezing accounts proves anything?" Kofi met her gaze evenly. "No," he said. "But it's a start." Selina let out a soft laugh. "You're making a mistake," she said. "Yawson will regret this." Kofi didn't react. "Yawson is aware of everything," he said. "That landed." Selina's expression shifted. "Just slightly." "He doesn't know everything," she said quietly. Kofi tilted his head. "Then, by all means," he replied, "enlighten us." Selina's lips pressed together. She wasn't going to speak. Not yet. Because she was still calculating, still searching for control. But control was slipping, and she knew it. Back at the hospital, Yawson stood outside the ICU once more. But this time, he wasn't waiting. He was preparing. His phone buzzed. "Kofi, it's done." Kofi said, "Accounts frozen, she's been served." Yawson nodded slowly. And her reaction? "Calm," Kofi replied. "Too calm." Yawson's eyes darkened. "That means she still thinks she has leverage." "Exactly." Yawson leaned against the wall. "Then we take that away too," he said. Kofi paused. "There's something else," he added. Yawson straightened slightly. "What were?" "We found a secondary property," Kofi said. "Not in her name, but connected." Yawson frowned. "Where outside the city?" Kofi replied. "Remote. Private." Yawson's mind sharpened instantly. "What's there, we don't know yet," Kofi said. But given everything else, he didn't need to finish. Yawson understood. Selina had been planning more. Much more. "Get a team," Yawson said. "We check it today." Kofi nodded. "I'll arrange it." The call ended. Yawson lowered the phone slowly. His reflection stared back at him in the glass window. But it wasn't the same man from yesterday. Something had changed. Something deeper than anger. This was no longer about reacting to what had happened. It was about uncovering everything that hadn't been seen yet. Because Selina had played a long game. And people who played long games didn't leave loose ends. Yawson turned toward the ICU door. His mother was alive. That was the only thing that mattered. But the truth was still unfolding. And somewhere out there, more answers were waiting. Answers that would reveal just how far Selina had gone, and how much she was willing to risk, to keep everything she had taken. The road out of Accra stretched long and empty under the harsh midday sun. Yawson sat in the front passenger seat, his gaze fixed ahead, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Kofi reviewed documents on his tablet, occasionally glancing up as the convoy moved steadily along the quiet highway. Behind them, 2 vehicles followed security, discreet but prepared. No one spoke for several minutes, because both men understood this wasn't just a visit. This was a confrontation with whatever Selina had tried to hide. She bought it through a shell company, Kofi said, finally breaking the silence. No direct link to her name, but the financial trail leads back to her accounts. Yawson nodded slightly. And no one has been there recently. Kofi shook his head. Not that we can confirm, but the last recorded activity was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Yawson's jaw tightened. That meant whatever was there hadn't been abandoned long. Stay alert, he said quietly. Kofi nodded. The vehicles slowed as they approached a narrow dirt road partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. The driver turned carefully, tires crunching against gravel and dry earth. The further they went, the more isolated it became. No houses, no people, just land. Quiet. Too quiet. After several minutes, a structure came into view, a house, if it could be called that. It stood alone, surrounded by dry grass and scattered trees. The paint was faded, the windows dark, the gates rusted slightly but still intact. It didn't look abandoned. It looked forgotten. Yawson's eyes narrowed. This is it, yes, Kofi said. The convoy came to a stop. The engine died. And suddenly, there was only silence. Yawson stepped out of the car. The heat hit him immediately, heavy and dry, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the house. Something about it felt wrong, not in an obvious way, but in the kind of way that made instincts sharpen. Check the perimeter, he instructed. The security team moved instantly, spreading out, scanning the surroundings. Kofi stepped beside him. You think she was using this as a backup, he asked. Yawson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked forward slowly, his eyes scanning every detail. The door, the windows, the ground. Then he stopped. What is it? Kofi asked. Yawson pointed. Near the entrance, partially covered by dust. Footprints. Fresh. Kofi crouched slightly, examining them. Recent, he said. Very recent. Yawson's expression darkened. She knew we were coming, he said. Kofi looked up. You think she came here after last night? Yawson nodded. She's not the type to wait, he said. She moves. Kofi stood. Then we need to move faster. Yawson didn't respond. He was already walking toward the door. The handle turned easily, unlocked. That alone was enough to raise concern. Yawson pushed it open slowly. The door creaked, and the interior revealed itself. Dim, quiet, but not empty. Furniture was in place, minimal but functional. A table, chairs, a couch. Nothing luxurious, nothing personal, just purposeful. This wasn't a home, Kofi said softly. No, Yawson replied. It was a setup. He stepped inside. The air felt different. Still, heavy, like something had been happening here. Recently. The team entered behind them, checking rooms quickly, efficiently. Clear, one of them called from the hallway. Clear here? Another voice followed. Yawson moved deeper into the house. Every step careful, every sense alert. Then he stopped. There, in the corner of the main room, a desk, and on it, a laptop. Closed, but not packed, not removed, left behind. Yawson approached slowly. This doesn't make sense, Kofi said. If she fled, why leave this? Yawson didn't answer. He opened the laptop. The screen flickered to life. No password. That was the first sign. Selina was careful. Too careful. She would never leave something like this unprotected. Unless she wanted us to see this, Yawson said. Kofi's expression tightened. Or she didn't have time. Yawson's eyes moved across the screen. Files, folders, documents. Then one folder stood out. Named simply Final Transfer. Yawson clicked it. The contents loaded instantly, and what he saw changed everything. Large sums of money, not just transferred, but scheduled, multiple accounts, multiple destinations, all set to move. Within hours. Kofi leaned closer. "This is everything," he said. "She's about to drain it all." Yawson's mind raced. "She's not just running," he said. "She's disappearing." Kofi nodded. "With enough money to never be found." Yawson's jaw tightened. Not happening. He pulled out his phone. "Kofi, we freeze everything now," he said. "All remaining accounts. Immediate action." Kofi was already dialing. "It's in motion," he said. Yawson turned back to the screen. Scrolling, reading, analyzing. Then another file. Hidden. Buried deeper. He opened it. And this time, the room went completely still. Because what appeared on the screen was not financial. It was personal. Photos, videos, records of Mama Efua, taken in the basement, weak, trapped, suffering. Yawson's breath slowed, then stopped. "She documented it," Kofi said quietly. Yawson didn't respond. He couldn't. Because this was something else entirely. This wasn't just control. This wasn't just strategy. This was cruelty. Deliberate, observed, recorded, as if it meant nothing. Yawson's hand trembled slightly as he closed the file, but his eyes were steady, cold-focused. "This ends today," he said. Kofi nodded, "Yes." But then a sound from outside. Engines. Yawson turned sharply. The security team reacted instantly. Vehicles approaching Kofi moved toward the window. "3 cars," he said. Fast. Yawson's expression didn't change. "She's here," he said. The cars stopped abruptly outside. Doors opened. Footsteps. Fast. Determined. And then Selena. She stepped into view. Dressed sharply. Composed. As if nothing had changed. As if she was still in control. Yawson walked toward the door. Kofi followed. The tension was immediate. Palpable. Selena stopped a few feet away. Her eyes met Yawson's. And for a moment, no one spoke. Then she smiled. A slow, calculated smile. "You move faster than I expected," she said. Yawson didn't return the expression. "You ran," he replied. Selena tilted her head slightly. "I repositioned," she corrected. Yawson's gaze didn't waver. "It's over, Selena." She laughed softly. "No," she said. "It's just getting interesting." The air tightened, because this was not surrender. This was escalation, and Yawson knew whatever came next would not be simple. Because Selena wasn't just fighting to survive. She was fighting to win. The air between them thickened the moment Selena stepped forward. Not rushed, not afraid, just deliberate. As if she had already calculated every possible outcome and chosen this one. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice calm, almost conversational, as though they were discussing something trivial instead of standing at the edge of collapse. Yawson didn't move. "This place belongs to you?" he asked. Selena's lips curved slightly. "Nothing belongs to anyone forever," she replied. Kofi shifted beside him, his eyes scanning the scene, the cars behind her, the men stepping out slowly, their posture not aggressive, but ready, prepared. "You brought people," Kofi said. Selena glanced at him briefly. "I don't like being outnumbered," she said. Yawson took a step forward. "You think this is about numbers?" he asked. Selena met his gaze. "No," she said. "This is about control." Silence followed, heavy, unstable. Yawson's voice dropped. "You lost control the moment I opened that door." Selena's smile faded. "Just slightly, but enough." "You think that was the only door?" she asked quietly. Kofi's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" he demanded. Selena didn't answer him. Her focus remained on Yawson. "You've always been smart," she said, "but you've also always been predictable." Yawson didn't react. "You care too much," she continued, "about people, about emotions, about things that don't last." Yawson's expression remained steady. "And you care about nothing," he replied. Selina shrugged. "I care about survival," she said, "and power, because those are the only things that matter when everything else falls apart." Yawson took another step forward. "You didn't just survive," he said, "you destroyed." Selina's eyes hardened. "I adapted," she corrected. Kofi stepped in slightly. "This conversation is over," he said. "We have enough evidence to proceed legally. You should cooperate." Selina turned to him slowly. "Law," she said, almost amused. "You still think this ends in a courtroom?" Kofi held her gaze. "That's exactly where it ends." Selina smiled again, but this time, there was something different in it, something sharper. "You're thinking too small," she said. Yawson's eyes narrowed. "What are you planning?" he asked. Selina didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag. The security team reacted instantly, hands moving, posture tightening, but Selina raised her hand calmly. "Relax," she said. "If I wanted to harm anyone, I wouldn't do it like this." She pulled out a phone and held it up. "Everything you found in there," she said, nodding toward the house, "is just a copy." Yawson's expression didn't change, but something inside him shifted. "What do you mean?" he asked. Selina tapped the screen lightly. "I have backups," she said. "Multiple. In places you won't find easily." Kofi stepped forward. "You're threatening us?" he asked. Selina looked at him. "No," she said. "I'm negotiating." Yawson's voice was cold. "You're in no position to negotiate." Selina tilted her head. "That's where you're wrong." She took a step closer. "Because what I have doesn't just expose me." A pause. "Then it exposes you too." The words landed, unexpected, sharp. Yawson's eyes flickered, but only for a second. Kofi reacted immediately. "That's not going to work," he said. "We know exactly what you've done." Selina didn't even look at him. Her focus stayed on Yawson. "You think you know everything," she said, "but you don't know how your empire really works." Yawson's voice dropped. "Say what you want to say." Selina smiled faintly. "While you were away," she began, "I wasn't just managing the house. I was managing your business interests here." Yawson didn't interrupt. He listened. Because now, this was no longer just about his mother. "I made decisions," Selina continued, "signed documents, approved transactions, built connections." Kofi frowned. "You had limited authority," he said. Nothing beyond Selina raised a hand. "Limited," she repeated. "You'd be surprised what can be done with the right signatures. And the right timing." Yawson's eyes darkened. "What did you do?" he asked. Selina's smile widened slightly. "I expanded things," she said, "moved money, invested in places you wouldn't have approved." Kofi stepped forward again. "That's illegal." Selina shrugged. "Only if you can prove it." Yawson's voice remained calm. "And the backups?" he asked. Selina's expression shifted again. Now, it was serious. "They contain everything," she said, "transactions, records, authorizations." A pause. "And some of those authorizations have your name on them." Kofi's face tightened. "That's impossible," he said. Selina looked at him. "Is it?" Yawson didn't move, didn't speak, because he understood. Selina hadn't just stolen, she had manipulated, used his absence, used his trust, used his identity to build something complicated, something that could turn against him. "You're trying to create leverage," Yawson said finally. Selina nodded slowly. "Exactly." Kofi shook his head. "This won't hold in court," he said. "Forgery fraud?" Selina interrupted. "Maybe," she said, "but not before it creates damage." Silence. Heavy. Because now, the situation had changed. This wasn't just a case of exposing her. This was a risk to Yawson's reputation, his business, everything he had built. Selina took another step closer. I don't need to win, she said quietly. I just need to make sure you don't. Yawson finally moved, one step forward, then another, until he stood directly in front of her. His voice was low, controlled. You're done, Selena. She met his gaze. No, she said softly. I'm not. Yawson's eyes didn't waver. You made one mistake, he continued. Selena's expression didn't change. And what's that? Yawson leaned slightly closer. You thought I would protect my empire more than my family. A pause. Then, you're wrong. Selena's smile faded completely. Because for the first time, she hesitated. Yawson stepped back. You can release whatever you think you have, he said. You can try to destroy everything. His voice remained steady. But I will still stand. Kofi looked at him, understanding, respect. Because this was not fear. This was resolve. Selena studied Yawson carefully, as if reassessing, recalculating. For the first time since this began, she was unsure. You're willing to lose everything, she asked. Yawson didn't hesitate. I already almost lost the only thing that matters, he said. A beat. My mother. Silence. Complete. Unavoidable. Because in that moment, the balance shifted. Not in power, but in purpose. Selena looked at him. Really looked. And something in her expression cracked. Not regret, not guilt, but realization. Yawson was no longer playing her game. He had stepped out of it entirely, and that made him dangerous. Because people who have nothing left to protect are impossible to control. Selena took a slow step back, her mind racing, adjusting, planning. Because she wasn't finished. Not yet. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Yawson didn't respond. He simply watched her, calm, unmoved. Because whatever came next, he was ready. And Selena knew it. The silence after Yawson's words did not feel like an ending. It felt like a shift, a quiet, irreversible turning point. Selena stood there for a moment longer, her eyes locked on his, searching for something, fear, doubt, hesitation. She found none. And that unsettled her. Because for the first time since everything began, Yawson was no longer reacting to her. He was standing outside her reach. Fine, she said at last. Her voice lower now, less theatrical, more grounded. You want to do this your way? Then let's do it. Kofi stepped forward slightly. You don't get to set terms, he said. Selena ignored him. Her gaze never left Yawson. I'm leaving, she said. For now. Yawson didn't move. That's not your choice anymore. Selena let out a soft breath, almost amused. You think you can stop me? She asked. Here with this? She gestured lightly at the security team. Yawson's expression remained calm. No, he said, but I don't need to. A faint siren sounded in the distance. Low at first, then clearer. Closer. Selena's eyes flickered. Just once, but it was enough. You called them, she said. Yawson didn't deny it. I called everyone, he replied. The sirens grew louder, approaching fast. Selena's jaw tightened. For a moment, the calm facade slipped, because this wasn't part of her timing. Her plan had been to control the narrative, to dictate the pace. But now the pace had been taken from her. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, she said quickly. Yawson tilted his head slightly. No, he said. I'm making it exactly what it is. The sirens were almost upon them now. The security team shifted, repositioning subtly. Kofi remained steady, watching Selena closely. You can still cooperate, he said. This doesn't have to get worse. Selena laughed softly. You still think this is about avoiding consequences, she said. It's about facing them, Kofi replied. Selena's eyes returned to Yawson. Is that what you want? She asked. A public scandal. Investigations headlines. Yawson didn't hesitate. "I want the truth," he said. "A beat, no matter what it costs." The words landed, hard, because Selina understood what they meant. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't protecting his image. He was ready to let everything burn, if that's what it took. And that made him dangerous in a way she hadn't anticipated. The first police vehicle arrived, then another. Dust rose as they pulled in engines, cutting off sharply as officers stepped out, their presence immediate, authoritative. The atmosphere changed again. Not tense now, but controlled, structured. Selina's options were narrowing, fast. An officer approached. "Mr. Mensah," he asked. Yawson nodded. "Yes. We received your report," the officer said. "We'll need a statement." "You'll get it," Yawson replied. "But first her." He turned slightly. The officer followed his gaze. Selina, standing still, watching, calculating. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, "we need you to come with us." Selina didn't move. Not immediately. She looked at Yawson one more time. Long, measuring, as if trying to memorize something or decide something. Then, slowly, she raised her hands, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's go." The officers moved in professional controlled. They didn't rush, they didn't force, but their presence was clear. Selina was no longer in control. As they escorted her towards the vehicle, she spoke again. Not to the officers, to Yawson. "This isn't over," she said. Yawson didn't respond. He simply watched, because he knew. People like Selina didn't end things quietly. They adapted. They shifted. They waited. But so did he. Hours later, back at the hospital, the world felt different again. Not lighter, not easier, but clearer. Yawson stood beside his mother's bed, watching her sleep. Her breathing was steadier now. Her face, still fragile, but no longer lost. The machines around her beeped softly, steady, consistent, alive. That was enough, for now. The door opened quietly. Kofi stepped in. "It's done," he said. Yawson didn't turn. "She's in custody." "Yes." "And the charges filed," Kofi replied. "Kidnapping, unlawful detention, financial fraud. It's strong." Yawson nodded slowly. "And the assets frozen," Kofi said. "She won't be able to move anything else." Yawson finally turned. "What about the backups?" he asked. Kofi paused. "We're working on it," he said. "But even if she releases something, we can counter it." Yawson held his gaze. "I don't care about the damage," he said. "I care about the truth." Kofi nodded. "I know." A brief silence followed. "Then she asked about you," Kofi added. Yawson frowned slightly. "When at the station," Kofi said, "before processing." Yawson's expression didn't change. "What did she say?" Kofi hesitated, then answered. "She said, 'You underestimate her.'" Yawson looked back at his mother, at her quiet, fragile form, then back at Kofi. "No," he said calmly, "I don't." Because he knew exactly what Selina was. And that was why he had acted the way he did. Carefully, completely, without leaving gaps. "You should get some rest," Kofi said. Yawson shook his head. "Not yet." Kofi studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll handle the rest," he said. Yawson gave a small nod. "Thank you." Kofi left. The room fell quiet again. Yawson sat down beside the bed, his eyes never leaving his mother. For the first time in days, there was no immediate crisis, no urgent decision, no hidden truth waiting to explode, just stillness. And in that stillness, he allowed himself to feel it. Everything. The anger, the guilt, the relief, the pain, all of it. Because this was the moment between survival and healing. And as he reached for his mother's hand, holding it gently, he made a silent promise. Not just to protect her, but to never again let silence become suffering. Because this time, he had heard her. and he would never ignore that voice again. The news did not take long to spread. By the next morning, headlines had begun to appear across local media outlets, some cautious, others sensational. Words like business tycoon's wife, arrested elder. Abuse allegations in high-profile home and financial irregularities under investigation circulated rapidly, each version incomplete, each version searching for truth in fragments. Yawson knew it would happen. He had expected it. What he didn't expect was how little it mattered to him now. He sat quietly in the hospital room, sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow over Mama Efua's resting form. Her condition had improved slightly overnight. The doctors had reduced some of the emergency interventions, and though she was still weak, her body was responding. That was all he cared about. Everything else could wait. But the world outside did not wait. A knock came at the door. Yawson turned slightly. "Come in." Kofi stepped inside holding a tablet. "It's escalating," he said. Yawson didn't ask what he meant. He already knew. "Media," he said. Kofi nodded, and more. Yawson's eyes narrowed slightly. "What else?" Kofi hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough to signal that what he was about to say mattered. "She released something," he said. Yawson's posture shifted. What Kofi handed him the tablet. "Watch." Yawson took it, pressed play. The video began. It was grainy at first, then sharpened. A recording. An office. Yawson's office. His voice, his signature. Documents being signed. Transactions being approved. But something was off. The timing. The context. It didn't match his memory. Yawson's eyes darkened. "This is manipulated," he said. Kofi nodded. "Edited," he confirmed, carefully. The video continued. Clips spliced together, moments taken out of context, creating a narrative that suggested something else, something dangerous. Yawson paused the video. "She's trying to tie me to the transactions," he said, "yes?" Yawson exhaled slowly. "Will it hold?" Kofi shook his head. "Not in court," he said, "but in public it creates doubt." Yawson nodded. He understood that. Truth and perception were not always the same. And Selena knew how to manipulate perception. What else, Yawson asked. Kofi looked at him. "She gave an interview." Yawson's eyes lifted. "From custody, yes." Yawson's jaw tightened. "What did she say?" Kofi hesitated again, then answered. "She said, 'You knew.'" Silence filled the room. Not loud, not explosive, but deep, because that accusation cut differently. Yawson leaned back slightly. "She's building a counter-narrative," he said. "Exactly." Yawson's eyes returned to his mother, still resting, still unaware of the storm outside. "She wants to confuse the truth," he continued, "make it unclear who is responsible." Kofi nodded, and by time. Yawson didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stood, walked slowly towards the window. The city stretched out before him, busy, unaware, moving as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because now, the fight was no longer private. It was public, and Selena had just made her move. Yawson turned back. "We respond," he said. Kofi raised an eyebrow. "How?" Yawson's voice was calm. "We don't argue," he said. "We present facts." Kofi nodded slowly. "That could work." Yawson stepped closer. "Not just could," he said. "It will." Kofi studied him. "You're sure Yawson didn't hesitate?" "Yes." Because he understood something Selena was counting on. Fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of damage. Fear of losing everything. But she had miscalculated. He wasn't afraid of losing his image. He was afraid of losing his truth, and those were not the same. Later that day, the press gathered. Cameras, microphones, voices calling out. All waiting, all watching. Yawson stepped forward. Not rushed, not defensive, just steady. Kofi stood beside him. Prepared. Focused. Yawson looked at the crowd, then spoke. "I won't speak in anger," he said, "and I won't respond to manipulation." The noise quieted, because his tone was different, controlled, grounded. "This is not about reputation," he continued. "This is about truth." A pause. "My mother was held against her will in my own home," he said, "for 6 months. The words landed, heavy, real, and I failed to see it," he added. A murmur moved through the crowd, not because of the accusation, but because of the admission. Yawson didn't avoid it. He faced it. "I take responsibility for not being present," he said, "for trusting without verifying." Kofi glanced at him, because that was not expected, but it was powerful. And now Yawson continued, "I am correcting that." He gestured slightly. Kofi stepped forward. "Holding documents. Evidence," Kofi said, "unedited, verified, traceable." He began to distribute copies. Yawson continued speaking. "There are attempts to distort the facts," he said, "to create confusion, to shift blame." He paused. "Then, but the truth does not change." Silence. Complete. Because that was something no manipulation could easily undo. Yawson stepped back. The statement was done. No shouting, no drama. Just clarity, and clarity was stronger than noise. Back at the station, Selena watched it all. From a screen. Alone. Her expression didn't change. Not visibly. But inside, something shifted. Because she had expected resistance, defensiveness, denial. She had expected him to protect himself. Instead, he had done the opposite. He had admitted weakness, and in doing so, he had removed her leverage. Her fingers tightened slightly. "He's not playing the game," she murmured, because he wasn't. He had stepped outside it, and that made everything harder, but not impossible. Selena leaned back slowly, her mind already moving, already adjusting. Because if one strategy failed, she would find another. She always did. At the hospital, Yawson returned to his mother's side. The room was quiet again, peaceful, for now. He sat beside her, took her hand gently, and for the first time, there was no immediate threat, no urgent move, just time. And as he looked at her, he understood something deeper than everything else that had happened. This was not just about exposing Selena or winning a public battle. It was about restoring something that had been broken. Trust, dignity, family. And that it would take more than justice. It would take healing, real, slow, patient healing. Yawson leaned back slightly, his eyes steady, because the storm wasn't over. But he was no longer in the middle of it. He was guiding it. And whatever came next, he would face it, without fear, without hesitation, because now he knew exactly what mattered. The courtroom was quieter than anyone expected. No shouting, no dramatic outbursts, no sudden confessions, just order, structure, and the weight of truth waiting to be spoken. Yawson sat at the front, his posture straight, his expression calm but focused. Beside him, Kofi organized documents with precision, every page placed exactly where it needed to be. Across the room, Selena sat alone. No longer surrounded by polished walls or controlled environments. No longer dictating the pace, just another defendant. But even now, she didn't look defeated. She looked composed, watching, thinking, waiting. Because people like Selena didn't collapse under pressure. They adapted. The judge entered, everyone stood, then sat, and the proceedings began. "Mrs. Selena Yawson," the prosecutor said, stepping forward, "you are being charged with unlawful detention, financial fraud, and intentional harm." Selena didn't react. Her face remained still, controlled, as if the words had no power over her. "Do you understand the charges?" the judge asked. "Yes," Selena replied calmly. "And how do you plead a pause?" "Not long, but deliberate, not guilty." A murmur moved through the courtroom. Yawson didn't react. He expected this, because admitting guilt was not part of Selina's nature. The prosecutor nodded. Then we proceed. The evidence came first. Photos, documents, medical reports, all presented clearly, carefully, without exaggeration. Mama Ifua's condition when she was found, the environment she had been kept in, the duration, the impact, each detail laid out, piece by piece. Yawson watched, not as a businessman, not as a public figure, but as a son, and every image, every description, cut deeper than the last. Kofi leaned slightly toward him. "Stay focused," he whispered. Yawson nodded once, because this wasn't about emotion now. This was about truth. Then came the financial records. Kofi stepped forward this time. Confident, precise. These transactions, he said, gesturing to the screen, were executed under Mrs. Yawson's authority. Selina's lawyer stood. Objection. Authority was shared. Kofi didn't hesitate. Shared, he agreed, but misused. He clicked to the next slide. A timeline appeared. Clear, undeniable. Notice the pattern. Kofi continued. The moment Mrs. Ifua disappeared from public and financial records, the transactions increased. The courtroom grew quiet, because the connection was obvious, even without interpretation. Selina's lawyer stepped forward again. This proves correlation, not intent. Kofi nodded. Correct, he said, which is why we present intent separately. Another click. The screen changed, this time to something more personal. The recordings, the same ones Yawson had seen, but now unedited, full, context intact. The difference was immediate, clear. What had been manipulated before now revealed the truth. Selina's lawyer shifted slightly, because this was harder to counter. Selina remained still, but her eyes moved, tracking, calculating, looking for openings, because she knew if she lost control here, everything else would follow. Then came the moment that shifted everything. "Call the witness," the prosecutor said. A door opened, and slowly, Mama Ifua entered, supported gently, still weak, but standing. The courtroom fell silent, because this was not just evidence. This was reality, raw, unavoidable. Yawson's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to testify. Kofi leaned toward him. She insisted, he whispered. Yawson's eyes softened, because he understood. This wasn't about proving something. This was about reclaiming something. Mama Ifua took her seat. The oath was given. Then the questions began. "Can you tell the court what happened?" the prosecutor asked gently. Mama Ifua's voice was soft, but steady. "She locked me in the basement," she said. No hesitation, no confusion, just truth. The room held its breath. For how long, the prosecutor asked. 6 months, she replied. The number echoed, heavy, final. Selina's lawyer stood. "Mrs. Ifua," he said carefully, "is it possible that you misunderstood the situation, that this was for your safety?" Mama Ifua turned her head slightly, looking directly at him. "Then no," she said. Simple, clear, unshakable. The lawyer paused, because there was nothing to work with, no doubt, no uncertainty, just truth. Selina finally moved, just slightly. Her fingers tightened, her posture shifted, because this was not something she could manipulate. Not easily. Not anymore. The testimony continued. Details, moments, conversations, all laid out, not with anger, but with clarity. And that made it stronger, because it wasn't emotional, it was real. When it ended, the room remained silent. Not out of confusion, but out of understanding. Because the truth had been spoken, and it had weight. The judge leaned forward, his expression serious, measured. "This court has reviewed the evidence," he said. A pause. Extensively. Another pause. "Mrs. Selina Yawson, The room held still. "You are found guilty." The words landed, not loudly, but completely. Selina didn't react immediately. Her face remained composed, but her eyes changed, just slightly. Because this was the moment. The one she couldn't control. The one she couldn't redirect. The one that ended the game. Sentencing will follow, the judge continued. But Yawson wasn't listening anymore, because the outcome was already clear. Later outside the courtroom, the world felt different again. Not chaotic, not tense, just resolved. Yawson stood quietly as the media gathered again. Questions, cameras, voices. But this time, he didn't need to speak much, because the truth had already spoken for him. Kofi stepped beside him. "It's done," he said. Yawson nodded slowly. Yes, but his eyes were somewhere else. Because this wasn't victory, not really, it was justice, and justice didn't erase pain. It didn't undo time. It didn't heal everything, but it restored balance. And sometimes, that was enough. Back at the hospital, Yawson returned to his mother. She was resting, peacefully, finally. He sat beside her, took her hand gently, and this time, there was no urgency, no fear, just presence, real, steady. And as he looked at her, he knew. This was what mattered. Not the court, not the headlines, not the empire. Just this moment, this connection, this chance to rebuild. The first morning Mama Efua was allowed to sit by the window, the light felt new, not brighter, just gentler. It fell across her face in soft gold, warming the lines that had deepened over months of silence and confinement. She didn't speak at first. She simply watched the world outside the hospital, glass people, moving cars, passing life, continuing in a rhythm she was slowly relearning. Yawson stood a few steps behind her, quiet. He had learned that silence could be healing when it was shared, not imposed. "Do you remember this view?" he asked after a while. Mama Efua smiled faintly. "The city never stops," she said, "even when we do." Yawson nodded. "That used to scare me, and now it reminds me not to disappear inside it." She turned slightly, studying his face. There was something different about him, not just the exhaustion or the weight of recent days, but a deeper stillness, the kind that comes when a man stops running from what matters. "You've changed," she said gently. "So have you," he replied. She chuckled softly. "Age does that." He stepped closer, taking the seat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The machines that once surrounded her had been reduced. The room no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a place between endings and beginnings. "I've been thinking," Yawson said. Mama Efua looked at him. "That's usually dangerous." He smiled faintly. "About the house." Her eyes shifted just slightly. He noticed. "We don't have to go back there," he added quickly. "Not if you don't want to." Mama Efua considered that. It was never the house, she said. It was what happened inside it. Yawson nodded slowly. "Then we change what happens inside it." A quiet understanding passed between them. Not forced, not rushed, but real. Weeks passed. Recovery was not a straight line. There were good days and difficult ones, moments when Mama Efua's strength returned, and others when memories weighed heavier than her body could carry. But each day there was progress. Small, steady, true. Yawson rearranged his life without announcing it to the world. Meetings moved closer to home. Travel reduced. Delegation increased. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. For the first time, his success did not pull him away. It anchored him. He visited the house again, alone. Not to relive anything, but to reclaim it. The basement door had been removed entirely. The space below cleaned, restored, and opened to light. What had once been a place of silence was now filled with air and windows. He stood there for a long moment, breathing, then turned and walked out. Because some spaces didn't need to be remembered, they needed to be transformed. One afternoon, as Mama Efua sat in the garden of a smaller, quieter home Yawson had arranged near the outskirts of the city, Adwoa approached carefully. She had returned, not as someone afraid, but as someone finally free. "Madam," she said softly. Mama Efua looked up, her face warming instantly. "Adwoa," she said, "come sit." Adwoa hesitated, then obeyed. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said, "for not speaking sooner." Mama Efua reached out, placing a gentle hand over hers. "You stayed," she said, "even when you were afraid. That matters." Adwoa's eyes filled. "Sir said I could stay," she added quietly. Mama Efua smiled. "Then you are part of this family now." The word family settled gently in the air, not as something broken, but as something being rebuilt. The trial concluded with final sentencing weeks later. Selina Yawson was given a long-term sentence for her crimes: unlawful detention, financial fraud, and abuse. The court's decision was firm, supported by evidence too clear to ignore. There were no dramatic scenes, no final confrontations, just consequences, and for the first time since everything began, silence followed. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of before, but a quiet that allowed space for healing. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft amber, Yawson sat beside his mother on the veranda. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Sometimes presence was enough. "Do you regret it?" Mama Efua asked suddenly. Yawson turned slightly. "Regret what?" Everything she said. The choices, the distance, the trust. Yawson thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I regret the pain," he said, "but not the lesson." Mama Efua nodded slowly. "And what is the lesson?" Yawson looked out at the fading light. "That success means nothing if the people who built you are left behind," he said. She smiled. "Then you've learned well." He reached for her hand. And this time, there was no hesitation. Days turned into months. The headlines faded. The noise disappeared. But the change remained. Yawson became known for something different now, not just his wealth, but his presence. His foundation expanded, focusing on elder care, protection, and dignity. Not as a public move, but as a personal one, because some wounds, when healed properly, become purpose. And Mama Efua, she laughed again, not loudly, not often, but enough. Enough to remind him that life, even after breaking, could still be whole. One quiet night, as the house settled into stillness, Yawson paused outside his mother's door. He listened, not for fear, not for distress, but for peace. And when he heard the gentle rhythm of her breathing inside, he smiled. Because this time, he had heard her, and he would always listen. Sometimes the deepest wounds are not the ones the world can see, but the ones hidden behind closed doors in places where silence replaces truth. This story reminds us that success, wealth, and power mean nothing if we lose sight of the people who gave us our foundation. Yawson built an empire, but in doing so he almost lost the one person who made that empire possible, his mother. And Mama Efua, even in her darkest moments, held on to faith. Faith that love would return. Faith that truth would find its way to the light. In life, we often trust too easily, assume too quickly, and delay the conversations that matter most. But this story teaches us something powerful. Never ignore the quiet signs. Never assume someone is safe just because they are close to you. And most importantly, never take love for granted. true strength is not in how much you achieve, but in how you protect, honor, and stand up for those who once stood for you. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life deserves a call today? Who might be silently waiting for you? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your country right now. I'd love to hear from you. And if you believe stories like this matter, stories of truth, justice, and healing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because every story we tell might just help someone feel seen, heard, and not alone.